Okay, so in this video, let's conclude the creation of our super risk control. And that's going to mean that we need to set up the ability to match our attached control to the detached control and vice versa. To do this, we'll create some scripts on our asset. We'll call those scripts with some buttons created on our asset. And those scripts are going to call on some functionality that we saw when we tried to match our IK over to our FK. When we're matching IK to FK, we set the end effector's position to the end of our bones by basically calling on some functionality in Python that said, I want to set my world transform to another world transform. It works without all the parenting information, all of the pre-transforms, and will still set our particular node to have that world transform in terms of its space and orientation. That's fantastic because we can use that here to say, okay, I want my attached control to have the world transform of my detached control, or I want the detached control to have the world transform of the attached control. However, we're going to run into issues again. We know that these nodes exist inside a locked asset. That means we can't just call on this Python functionality. We need to have an editable node in order to call on that functionality. However, if we have an editable node that is visible and selectable, we'll get jumped down into the asset even when the asset is locked. So again, just like with our IK handle, we're going to create two new nodes, in this case, one for attached, one for detached, that are invisible and non-selectable. However, they're going to exist in the exact same space as our controls, one for attached, one for detached. They're going to be our editable nodes. We're going to specify them as editable on our asset, and they're going to be the ones that we call that set world transform function on. From there, we can then copy their rotation information, since we're only interested in this case in rotations, from there to the actual control object, knowing of course that the control object's parameters have indeed been promoted to the asset level. So with that, I'm going to allow editing of contents of our risk control, jump down inside, and we need to create some nulls that exist in the same space as our control objects. Now we can take a look at our risk control. We see we have no pre-transform and no translation parameters, etc. That means all I need to do is wire a null off of its parent, and this will exist in the exact same space as our risk control for the ARM parent. So what I can do here is rename this guy to risk control underscore ARM parent underscore editable. I do want to turn off visibility and selectability. We can repeat that for the master control parent as well. So risk control underscore master control parent underscore editable. Again, turn off visibility and selectability. We can do that because we know our control has no pre-transform and no translation parameters. So because of all of that, let's go ahead and make sure that these are specified as editable objects. So I'm going to double click and highlight the entire name, Control C to copy that name, bring up the type properties for the asset, and I want to jump over to the basic tab, put a space on the end of the existing node and paste the name of our new node, accept that, jump back down inside, double click and grab the name of our other editable object, Control C, jump up, grab our type properties, space, Control V to paste that as well and apply to make sure those changes took place. So now we can create our buttons. So one button for matching attached to detach, one for detach to attach. So match attach to detach. And of course match detach to attach. And we can create these scripts that are going to be called by the callback of those buttons. So let's jump over to the scripts tab, create a Python module event handler, and define our script. So I'll start off with the matching attach to detach. So let's define match attach to detach. And we obviously need to get the information about our editable attach object, the detach object, and our attach object, because we want to say to our editable attach object, match the world transform of the detach object. We then need to copy rotation information from that editable attach object over to our actual attach object. So we need to get access to 3 nodes. Now instead of specifying these nodes as parameters on our asset as we've done before in the past, what I'm going to do, I'm going to ensure that, since we know that this is a asset for ourselves, this is something that only us are going to work with, we're going to ensure that we know the names of those nodes down inside the asset and that those node names don't get changed. Since we know that we're getting called from our asset, we know the relative path to the node inside the asset. As long as the name doesn't get changed, we can simply call on the who.pwd.node and pass it the name of the node we're after, which of course that name is relative to us, so it's inside us, and that will give us that node. As long as the name isn't changed, this script will still function perfectly. Since this is an asset that we're using as cells, it's not intended for someone to ever come in and change the asset, that's perfectly fine to assume that those names aren't going to get changed because we know not to change them. So I'm going to say that our attach object is equal to who.pwd.node, and let's grab our wrist control underscore arm parent. We want our editable attach object to equal who.pwd.node wrist control underscore arm parent underscore editable, and we want our detach object, and that's equal to who.pwd.node wrist control underscore master control parent. From there, it's as simple as telling the editable attach object to set its world transform to the world transform of our detached object. So editable attach object dot set world transform detach object dot world transform. So it's going to grab the world transform of our detach object and set that for our editable attach. Since it's editable and it's specified as an editable node, that's going to work out fantastically for us. And then we can go ahead, grab our attach object and set its rotate X, Y, and Z to the values that are now on that editable version of the attach object. So I'm going to say attach object.palm rx. We obviously want to make sure that we get the referenced parameter because we know this is going to be promoted and we can't just set the parameter itself. That will cause a permission error. From there, I want to make sure that we set pending so we don't actually cause any keyframe changes unless of course auto key is set. And what value do we want to set that to? We want to set that to the editable attach object dot eval palm rotate X. So take whatever rotate X is for our editable attach object and set that for our attach object. So I'm going to copy that entire line and paste that twice over, changing this of course for rotate Y and Z that we're evaluating from the editable attach, and rotate Y and Z that we are setting for the actual attach object. If we make sure we call this from our match attach to detach button, we should now be able to test this out. So I'm going to jump over to our parameters, match attach to detach. We want a Python script language. We're going to call on who.pwd, that's us, .hda module, that's our Python event handler that we just created, and we want to call on match attach to detach. If we accept this, so let's go ahead, and we know that our detach control currently is set and oriented in that way. That means if we match our attach to the detach, we should see our attach snap over to that orientation. So let's click on match attach to detach, and there we go, our attach has snapped to that orientation. If we blend back and forth between now, these are identical in orientation, so there's no effect in terms of movement on the hand. So I can zero these back out. So now we've got that in place, let's right click, bring up the type properties. We can jump over to our scripts tab. I'm going to copy this entire script, Control C, let's jump to the end, drop down, paste, make sure that we do have that final parenthesis there, and we can now adapt this for our match detach to attach. So we still want our attach object, but instead of our editable attach, we want our editable detach, which is obviously going to be our wrist control underscore master control parent underscore editable, and obviously we still want our detach object as well. We want to set the world transform of our editable detach object to our attach object, and then we want to go ahead, and I will delete all but the first line of that since it's going to be easier to copy and paste that once it's been adapted. I do want to make sure that we're setting our detach object to the editable detach objects parameters. So we can grab that entire line, paste that twice over, then rotate Y, rotate Z for the parameters we are referencing, and rotate Y, rotate Z for the parameters that we're actually setting to those values. If we go over to our button for match detach to detach, match detach to attach, change that to Python and call on who.pwd.hda module.match detach to attach, and accept that. And there's an indentation layer, that's fine. So let's take a look at what's causing that indentation error. And that could well be that we don't have white space on the end of our script. So let's see if that fixes the problem. And it's on line 24, so let's take a look at line 24 and see why we're getting a problem on line 24. And that's because, in fact, we have a little bit of too much white space where we have a new indentation and there's nothing that's telling it to have an indentation block there. You have to be very careful with indentation when working with Python. So let's accept that. Great, no errors now coming up. We can make sure that if we save our operator type and match the current definition, so this guy is indeed locked. So we've got our attach currently over here, our detach here. Let's match our detach to our attach. Notice that they are now aligned. We get no change in our wrist whatsoever. So now we can come in and we can say, okay, let's rotate my attach over here. And then let's say match detach to attach. Fantastic. So then we could blend over to detach, carry on working from the detach. Then we could say match attach to detach, blend back over, and so on. So this is now very flexible for blending back and forth between the two because we can match one to the other. So with that, that is going to conclude the setup of our super risk control. Thanks a lot, everyone.